Hey, so it's Luke Ford, your moral leader here, with Helen Jupiter, recently of Juicy, and now she's working on a book, travel memoir, right?
That's correct.
And when did this stuff take place that you're memoirizing?
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Almost exactly 5 years ago.
Where?
I flew from Los Angeles to Moscow.
Wow.
Alone.
Wow.
And I had a series of adventures that led me from Moscow to St. Petersburg into Estonia in a big loop around Europe and back out through Athens 70 days later.
Wow.
Yes, it was exciting.
And did you take a lot of notes while you're doing all this, or?
I kept a blog.
Yeah.
Yes. And so now this was back in 2003. I kept a blog and I sent a bunch of emails.
Right.
To friends and family back home. And I kept a scrapbook which was mostly neglected throughout the trip.
Right.
But the body of emails and the blog and the few notes that I kept in the scrapbook ended up being sort of a good source of material now.
Oh, cool. Huh.
Yeah.
And at what age did you realize that writing was your thing?
I would say the first time I discovered a book as a child.
Really?
I immediately was mesmerized and enraptured by books, yeah. I used to make books out of the little pieces of cardboard that were in my father's t-shirts. You know, he'd buy like 3 t-shirts at the drugstore and there would be a piece of cardboard in each one to keep it.
Right.
And I would take 2 pieces of cardboard and a few pieces of construction paper and sew them together with to make a binding and then like make color in pages of the books. When
did you first realize that you were a good writer?
I don't know that I've fully realized that yet. I mean, that's a fleeting recognition that we have.
Right.
I've had people telling me that all of my life.
Right.
And there are moments when I'm really, like, in the groove when I think to myself, I've got a knack for this.
Right.
But then there are many more moments when I'm rereading what I've written and thinking to myself, I suck. Right. You know? So it's back and forth. What
type of writing comes easiest for you? If any.
A lot of it, most of it comes easy to me. I used to write a lot of poetry. Mm-hmm. I love writing fiction, all kinds of fiction. I love symbolism. I love allegory. Right now, I'm obviously working on something that's nonfiction, and I'm enjoying that too. I really just love words and language and playing with them and making them sort of bend to my will.
And what other types of jobs have you had aside from writing jobs?
I've had many, many jobs, as many writers have.
Yeah.
I worked as a docent at the Museum of Tolerance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You did those tours?
I led those tours. Have you taken one?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like it's the best Holocaust museum to take a first date.
And why is that? Have you actually taken more than one first date there?
No, I actually haven't taken any dates.
I got picked up there once when I was working, actually.
Wow.
But
by your husband?
But no, I don't know that he's ever been to that museum, actually. But by a very nice Armenian man who was in town on business and decided to spend the hour he had free touring the Museum of Tolerance, and he had lots and lots of questions for me. One of them was, "Do you want to have dinner?" So
did you have dinner?
I met him for a fruit plate at Earth Cafe. Okay. You know, he was leaving town. I figured I'd humor him.
How long did you do that?
I did that for a while until they fired me.
Why did they fire you?
I was a good docent too.
I'm sure.
I took it very seriously. I studied all the course material. I mean, they make you go through serious training.
Right.
And I studied it, and I put my heart into it, and I really vibed well with all the different groups that came in, whether they were middle school students or high school students or older people. I mean, they had me giving tours to their benefactors at points.
Wow.
And I loved it. But
what happened?
What happened was, this was back, I guess this was the year that the film Crash came out.
Yeah.
And during the holidays, they told us that, surprise, as sort of like a bonus, we're giving you 2 paid hours off. And I was like, fantabulous, I'll take it. And they were like, however, you must spend those 2 paid hours off here in the museum watching Crash. And I was like, well, you know, I prefer not to. And they were like, you know, it ended up being, well, if you won't watch Crash, then you're not a good fit. And bye-bye.
Why didn't you want to watch Crash? I mean...
That's just not how I wanted to spend.
Right.
Well, look, I would have rather worked those 2 hours, honestly.
Right.
I just didn't want to see the movie. I'm very particular about movies. And I didn't want to have that. There was no reason to impose that on me.
Right.
You know, if it was a history or a documentary on the Holocaust, sure.
Right.
You know, if you think it'll add to, like, my docenting, fine. But
have you ever seen Crash?
No, have you?
Yeah.
Did you love it?
I watched it twice. I don't know.
Is it your favorite movie?
It's changed my life. I liked it.
Oh,
I liked it. But
very good.
What about Crash, like, annoyed you?
It just, like, I've had so many experiences where I go into a theater and everyone has said, oh, this movie is so profound, you know, it's brilliant, it's a masterpiece. And I go in and 20 minutes in, I'm like, it's so formulaic and I'm bored and I've just wasted $10 or $12 or $15 at this point, you know, in history. And I just, you know, I was like, Bartleby the Scrivener. I preferred not to. I didn't want to go there.
Great, that's hilarious.
And they weren't down with that at all.
That's funny.
So.
How long were you there?
Gosh, it had to have been maybe around 6 months before, you know, the floor fell out.
What do you think about everyone has to get channeled into the intolerant room? Remember at the end,
that you have to go through. You don't have the choice to go through the tolerant door. There were some people who got so upset about that. I mean, who really took it personally, and like, yeah, who were just not. Look, the most tolerant, liberal, you know, multicultural, diversity-loving people. No matter what, if you're human, somewhere in your consciousness, you have probably unknown prejudices. And actually, this memoir that I'm writing, at one point I discovered my own. And I was shocked and appalled at myself because I had no idea it even existed. But they're there, and you might not even know what they are, and you might never even encounter them, but they're there. So I think it makes a good point. I thought I was a fan of the everybody has to go through the intolerant door. Because everyone has a prejudice somewhere in their psyche, you know?
So what do you think about the whole Museum of Tolerance thing?
I think this is how I felt the whole time I was there too. I think it's a great concept. Yeah. I don't think that it's executed very well. I think it could use a lot of improvements, which was probably another part of why ultimately they decided to cut me loose, because I was probably a little bit too vocal about that. But
if you were in charge of the Museum of Tolerance with a free hand to do what you'd like, what would you do?
I would probably have to give it a lot of thought before I had a reasonable answer for you. But if they want to hire me to do that, I would be happy to. Yeah.
So you were energized by the mission?
Yeah, I mean, I was energized by the mission, the potential of it all. I love learning, and then I love sharing what I've learned, so that was a perfect setup for me. But anyway, you asked me what kind of jobs I've had. That was one of them.
Yeah.
I've also delivered pizzas,
and
worked in a coffee shop, and done just about everything else in between docenting at the Museum of Tolerance and delivering pizzas that you can imagine. I worked front office for a Beverly Hills plastic surgeon. What else? I drove a bus.
You were a dancer?
I was a dancer?
No,
I was a dancer. No, that's one thing I never did. I have a lot of respect for those women, though.
It's a tough way to end book.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I haven't gone there yet. So.
I don't want to go back to dancing. I don't want to do one more lap dance. No, I told myself no. I said I'm just going to do Torah talk from now on. That's what I told myself.
I was going to make a living doing Torah talk.
Make a living doing Torah talk.
Yeah. What else? So much. God.
And how did you get the gig at Juicy, and how long were you there?
I started, it was about 14 months ago. Yeah. It was end of August 2007. And I was introduced to the site through my very good friend, the noted author Elisa Albert.
Yes, yes.
And she said, yeah, you know, this